Right. Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. Today, we've got serial killers, dark mages, evil zombies, and all things horror. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Nothing to do with the fall season. Before we get to all those books, hi, everyone. Welcome back to MetaStellar, our YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And I want to thank one of our editors, E.S. Foster, for helping out with today's reviews. And Emma's here with us today. Hey, Emma.
Hey.
Hey, Emma. There you go. Uh, okay, so we do these reviews every Friday. We look at the top 5 books on Amazon's free bestseller list. If you didn't know that they had a free book bestseller list, you know now. The link to it is in the description box below. They don't make it easy to find, but every week, authors and publishers make some of their books free to attract people to the authors or to get them to read the first book of a series. And we grab those free books, the best of them, and we reviewed them for you. Today's list is a little bit different because 4 of the books on today's Free Friday list were all from the same series. And we're not going to review like all those books because we only read the first couple chapters of each book in our reviews because we want to get them out to you while the books are still free. So we can't read books 2, 3, and 4 because we haven't read the first one. And we don't want to read them anyway because we don't want to spoil things for you. So instead, we reviewed book number 1, and then we reviewed books 5, 7, and 8 on today's list. All right. And before we get into the books, I want to mention that MetaStellar is an online magazine. We publish free science fiction and fantasy short stories every week. And we also have 3 anthologies up. Our third anthology just came out um, last month, and here's the second one, and here's the first one. And our fall submission cycle is now open. So if you write short stories that are science fiction, fantasy, or horror, the link to the submission page is down in the description box below, as is the link to the anthologies, the link to our newsletter. You don't want to subscribe, you don't want to miss any of these free Fridays because they're free books. So you can subscribe to our newsletter and get them in your inbox every single Friday. All right, and let's get to the books because that's what you guys are here for. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see that cover. There you go. This is book number 8 on today's Amazon free science fiction and fantasy bestseller list. It's Snowflakes in Summer by Joshua Smith, the first of 3 books in the Snowflakes trilogy. It's a grimdark fantasy horror. The other 2 books are $4 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is like a Netflix for books. You pay $12 a month and you read all the books you want. If you read a lot of books and you don't mind being part of the Amazon hegemony, then it's a good deal. So I read the beginning of this, even though I do not like scary books. I don't like being scared. I have a hard time understanding why anybody wants to get scared. I won't even go into a haunted house. One of the scariest things I ever saw was in Salem, Massachusetts, a few Halloweens ago, because they go all out for October, and they'd have the haunted happenings, and the witch trials were there, and they had reenactments of the trials, a museum, and they had a dungeon where you can go down into the basement of this old stone building with these low roofs and creepy narrow hallways and see the cells where the witches were kept. And there were tiny cells, like barely like phone booth size cells, and so creepy and damp and cold. I'm still freaked out by it. So, yeah, so I start reading this book, and the very first paragraph has steady drips of rancid blood onto an old stone floor. And I almost put the book down right then and there because here I am thinking about this witch dungeon, and yeah, it's right there in my face. Okay, so deep breath. I go right back into it, and we're in the middle of an execution. There's several happening that day, and there's a priest executing people in front of an amphitheater full of students. and he's chopping this person into pieces, and it's gross, and there's way too many details. And apparently this isn't like a person, but an abomination, a zombie animated by evil magic. And the students, I guess, are being taught how to kill them. And then we get a lot of backstory, huge amount of backstory about this world. It's a medieval style fantasy world. There's kingdoms, magical enemies, magical priestly orders, some kind of evil is afoot. And it looks like our protagonist is a priest, Acheron, in one of these orders. It's not the best respected order. So we saw him in the first chapter a little bit, and then bunch of backstory and exposition. And then he's in a village. There's a threat. There's some kind of magical being or beings that's killing people in a way they haven't seen before. And he's an exorcist and a neophyte in his order. So the locals don't think much of him. They're like, why didn't we get a better priest? Why did we get a you? And then there's a wounded person there, and he demonstrates his powers when he saves the life of this person by pulling some evil magical thing out of him. And we learned that the victim was attacked by a pack of wolves with glowing eyes. And then the priest meets a young woman wailing loudly while wandering through the village. She's carrying a gnarled staff with a small glowing crystal on it. She looks half starved and underdressed because it's cold. And she's like spouting all these crazy ramblings. And he ignores that and urges her to go inside the inn and get warm before she gets frostbite. And then she finally comes inside and tells him that she's looking for her lost lord, a powerful elementalist, some kind of wizard. And none of the locals recognize her. And he finally figures out that the woman is from a different plane, the elemental plane of ice. And there's a little bit more magic happening, and the woman disappears. So the book reads like an epic fantasy. There's a lot of world building here, a lot of detailed descriptions of what's going on. The writing style is serious and mystical and epic and literary. And there was a little bit of a gruesome beginning, but it feels like it'd be like a really solid read, but a bit of a heavy read. And depending on my mood, I might enjoy reading this book despite the gruesome beginning, but odds are that I won't because I'm in the middle of a massive space opera series. So let's go on to the next book on this list, The Fabulous Misfortune by Jessica Gleason. And I saw this cover and I thought, oh, finally something light and funny. I bet this is a cozy, magical mystery. I was so wrong. So wrong. It's profane, it's creepy and weird, and both the protagonists and the enemies seem to be serial killers, and they live decades apart. I'm having a really hard time figuring out what's going on. It is very, very weird. So it starts out in 1984. Peggy Lee is a young woman, short brown hair. She's wearing silk scarves and tapestries. She's got a crystal ball and tarot cards. And she's trying to get in with this traveling caravan as a fortune teller through some weird coincidences. And she really, really wants this job. But she's very, very bad at fortune telling because she's totally unimaginative. Like, for example, a teenager comes in and she tells him he's going to have a tough day at school the next day. And then she tries the same thing on the two girls who come in next. She says, oh, you're going to go to school tomorrow. And they're like, no, we don't. We don't have classes tomorrow. And she said, oh, I didn't mean school. I meant stool. You're going to sit on stools tomorrow. And then you're going to see a squirrel. And then you're going to go home for dinner. So all these people demand their money back because these are like the worst fortunes ever. And she's getting really, really desperate because she's got to be paying her own way here, and she's not exactly bringing in money. Then we switch to 2022, so about 40 years later. And we meet three kids, 10 years old. They've pooled their money and bought two rats from a pet shop. And they take the box with the rats to an old abandoned railway tunnel. And one of the kids, a girl, opens up the box, takes the rats out by their tails, swings them around, and smashes them on the ground, which doesn't kill the rats. So the two boys violently stomp on the rats, and then the rats die in very gruesome detail. And the kids all agree that this was a lot of fun. So creepy. Then we're back in 1984, where Peggy Lee still having a really, really hard time telling fortunes. And gets depressed, she drinks some beer, and loses her virginity to a creepy clown who also works at this carnival. In a creepy way. This is not a sexy book. This is more like creepy, it's just creepy, creepy. And so and then I looked at the description to see what was going to happen next. And apparently, in order to keep her job, she's going to fake being a fortune teller by predicting people's deaths and then killing them to make her predictions come true. So I'm kind of interested in that, but the rest of the book is so creepy that I'm probably not going to stick with it. Like I said, I am squeamish and I don't want to have nightmares. I mean, why? Why would I want to give myself nightmares? There's no reason why, right? Yeah. Anyway, let's go on to book number 6. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys again. There we go. Bewitched by Laura Thalassa is the first of 2 books in the Bewitched paranormal fantasy series. The other book is $5, but it isn't Kindle Unlimited. And the series is set in the same universe as the author's The Bargainer series, which we previously reviewed. And apparently The Bargainer is one of the best romantasy series out there or something like that. And she's also the author of the book Pestilence, which we also reviewed before, which was a #1 Amazon bestseller and still is a #1 Amazon bestseller in its category. So apparently this is a really good author and people really like her. So Lilibet read this for us, and Lilibet isn't here today. So Emma, what did Lilibet think of this book?
Yeah, so like after your 2 reviews, I feel like Lilibet and I kind of got the better end of the deal a little bit of ways. I don't think like this one doesn't come across as creepy as what you just described. So it starts off with Celine Bowers, and she's this 20-year-old witch. She wants to join this witch academy of her dreams. So it's kind of like in her mind the Harvard of witch covens, essentially. She's been trying to get in for years, and she's finally managed to get an interview. So during this interview, she finds out that she needs to meet 2 requirements to be admitted. One is that she needs to go on some sort of magic quest, and then the other is that she needs to find a familiar, so like an animal to bond with and sort of be like her guide, that type of thing. So finding a familiar is apparently a lot harder than it sounds, which is why Celine decides to focus on the magic quest first. And since the magic quest must be experienced in the wilderness so she can bond with nature, she ends up booking this trip to South Africa and hopes for the best. Why she chooses South Africa, I have no idea, but it sounds like a really fun time. So she books this expensive trip on her credit card after getting drunk. So that's probably why she ended up just choosing South Africa just randomly because she was drunk. So she's really hoping this trip works out, or else she's not going to have an easy time getting into this coven. And also, she's having a much harder time paying her bills. So she really hopes to get in. She's got a lot ready on this. But Lilibet says that what's interesting about this magic is that whenever Celine uses it, it eats away at her memory. So that means whenever she casts a spell, especially if it's a powerful one, she ends up losing some of her memories. So because of this, she's always running around with a notebook and she's annotating important details in her life. So that way, if she were to forget anything, she could just go through the notebook or the post-it notes that she leaves up all around her house and remember things. So this actually made Celine, Lilibet says, feel like a very unique character, and she really can't wait to know more about her and what will happen on this trip. She also says she loved the fast-paced story. She loved how it was clean, it had like a clean writing style, and loved the fact that it was an easy, quick read. So it's like a quick weekend type of deal. And she says she's definitely going to continue with this, and she totally recommends it for fans of urban fantasy or books just full of magic, mysteries, and curses.
I do like that magic system. The
Yeah.
idea that doing magic makes you forget things. That's pretty unique. I don't think I've heard about that before. Yeah. But I'm not gonna read it because I hate magical academies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I did not enjoy going to school, and I don't enjoy reading about people being in school. Like, why? Why? It was not a fun time. Okay, next we have, that was book number 6. So now we have book number 5. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. And then there was Silence by Candace Robinson. Is a standalone book, but it's part of the Untamed Darkness paranormal horror series, which can be read in any order. And the other books are $1 to $4 each, and they are available on Kindle Unlimited. And Emma read this for us. So, Emma, what did you think of that book?
Yeah, so like this one, I really enjoyed the premise of it. It was a little bit creepier than the other one that I ended up reviewing, but not definitely not as creepy as what you just described. So I feel a little bit blessed there. I'm not really big on that spooky stuff like you are. Like you aren't either. So this story begins with Sadie and her husband, and they're like your average cute goth couple. They're on their way to a Halloween party in the cemetery. So they're dressed up like characters for the Corpse Bride. They're driving down the road here, and it's clear that they're very much in love. They're this young couple. It appears that they're newly married, so you could just tell that they really enjoy being around each other and they enjoy like each other's little quirks. So it was really cute to witness. And another thing about Sadie is that she's been trying to make it as a screenwriter. So things haven't been going really well. She's been trying really hard, and she's at that point where she's about to turn 24. Like, I know that's really old, you know. And she's like, "Oh, why has my career started yet? Why am I not, why have I made my mark in the industry? I'm about to turn 24. I'm so old, you know." She's at that point. So her husband and everyone's saying like, "No, you can do it, and you're not actually that old," but things haven't been going so well, so she's in a bit of a rut. So, to try to get her creativity flowing, everyone arrives at the Halloween party, including Sadie's mother-in-law, so her husband's mother, which is honestly really funny to me because imagine meeting your mother-in-law at a Halloween party. And they all get together, but everyone kind of eyes her weird, like they kept staring at her, and she thinks there's something wrong with her costume or something like that. But then all of a sudden, the mother-in-law pulls out a knife and pretends that they're going to stab her and use her as a blood sacrifice. Thankfully, her husband isn't a very good actor because he totally gives it away on accident. And they're like, "Well, we were just trying to make you feel better, you know." But it does give Sadie an opportunity, like a new idea for her new screenplay. So she gets to work on it. She gets started on this next piece, and one thing that she does to get inspiration is she drives back to the cemetery in the woods just to get some inspiration, get all the spooky imagery stuff going on. And while she's there, Sadie visits this old derelict cabin that she's always admired. It's been abandoned for a little while, but she imagines what it would be like to live in and write as much as she wants. And to her, that's one of her dreams. And she really enjoys the creeping aspect of it. So she does snap out of her dreams, unfortunately, because she realizes she's late to meet her husband and she has to rush home. But when she returns, Sadie discovers that her husband has hung himself, and that's when everything changes. So all of a sudden, her life has been completely derailed. She goes to live with her sister for the time being. A few months pass, and unfortunately, the day of her birthday is also the 3-month anniversary of her husband's death. So her birthday comes around, she's not really enjoying it. She's having a hard time getting back on her feet. But on her birthday, she receives this scheduled letter from her husband. So it's in her husband's handwriting. but it was sent like long after he had already passed. But it appears in the mail, and when she opens it, Sadie realizes that he had bought that abandoned cabin that she had always admired a long time ago, and he wanted to surprise her for her birthday. So now it belongs to her, and she can move in whenever she wants and just get started on writing like she's always wanted to. So at first, this seems kind of like a dream come true, but going forward, it definitely looks like not everything is as it seems with the cabin, and that's definitely when the spook factor kind of gets going. But like I said, I really liked the premise of this one. I really liked how it was fun getting to know Sadie and her husband and like her relatable dream of making it as a writer, but I also love just the little quirkiness of the characters. So I think I might stick with this one, especially given the spooky premise and wanting to see what's up with that cabin.
That seems like sad and spooky.
Yeah, it's like
She
wasn't too
lost.
spooky, but then it got really sad. It's like, oh, well, now you made me care about the characters, so now I need to see what happens.
All right. Before we go on to book number one on today's list, which is actually book number one, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Here they are. You guys are awesome. And the reason I want to thank them is because we pay for the original fiction that we publish, and we're all volunteers. All the money that's raised goes to pay writers for short stories. So if you want to support us and what we do, that would be fantastic. We'd love you. And I have books up on Amazon, and Emma is a freelance editor. So yeah, okay, book number one. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. Awakening by Catrina Burgess is the first of four books in the Dark Rituals, dark fantasy horror series. The other books are normally $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited, and they are also all free today. And this is the author's first time on our list, but yeah, I mean, these books have taken over the free list. Or at least they were all over. I mean, they took over the free list this morning when we were putting together the books to review. And Emma read this for us. So, Emma, what'd you think of this book?
I really liked the premise of this one. I kind of like the idea of dark fantasy mixed with spooky horror type elements, so this one was really fun. So it starts off with Kalina. She arrives at this magic shop and she's asked the man behind the counter if she can learn death arts. So it's a type of death magic where essentially you call upon the spirits of the unsettled dead for your magical uses, and typically the unsettled dead are like ghosts who haven't passed out of this mortal world yet, banshees, that type of thing. And so it's considered a really difficult magic to master and also something that you don't really want to get involved in because of all the ties that belong to it. But Kaulina does have a motivation to suddenly learn this because something terrible has just happened, and now she wants to seek vengeance. At this point, we don't know what it is, but clearly it was something that really devastated her. It was something that really made her step down this now very dark path. So the man behind the counter states that he can't help her, but his sister appears and says that their uncle could potentially teach her this magic. And this man declines to offer help because he's afraid that Kalina is a redeemer. So this is a group of people who are type like this radical type of group. They try to kill anyone with magic. So basically, in this world, it's kind of like the people are the ones who instigated the Salem witch trials, and they're the ones killing all of the witches or anyone who possesses magic. Because in this world, it does take place in the modern day, but right now, it's kind of difficult to tell. All I know is that there are a lot of different types of magic being wielded, and it's set with different instances of modern technology. They're like cell phones, apartment buildings, things like that. So whatever happened, how the magic got there, I'm not sure, but it made me want to keep reading. So Kalina tries to offer the siblings money, but the man behind the counter, Luke, he refuses. He says there's really no point in you learning about this magic. You got to have a really good reason, but you don't want to tell us. So he questions her, continually kind of antagonizes her a little bit, but he eventually figures out that Kalina is or was a healer. So this is someone who could never wield death magic. This is someone who, in this world, if you're a healer, you can't just forsake being a healer to learn something else. You would immediately be punished or even imprisoned for that type of thing within the healer community. But Kalina is desperate. So Luke agrees to meet her again at midnight to start training, because that's the witching hour. But before she can leave, Kalina nearly collapses from lack of food. So apparently, not only was the event devastating and it caused some sort of death, but she had also been on the run and she's been starving for the past several days. So Luke and his sister feed Kalina, but Luke still wants to try to get her to explain why she wants to learn death magic. And she refuses to say. It's clear that something terrible happened, but luckily she gets debunked there for the night. And that's all good for her. But at one point, everyone wakes up and they hear screaming outside. Luke goes to investigate, and it turns out it's this gang of another type of magic user that is attacking a woman in the street. So Kalina follows, also ready to fight. She doesn't want to just sit around, especially being, or she used to be a healer. But Luke calls on his death magic all of a sudden. So he ends up releasing this herd of banshees on the gang. And it's really cool. I really like the imagery. I really like the idea of it. And also at one point, Kalina has to remember her training of you have to close your eyes when being around a banshee, or they can like steal your soul away. So the banshees slowly come back after attacking the gang, and she has to hide as one passes through her. So she's got to keep her eyes closed. And that part was really cool. I didn't think it was like overly spooky. But after this whole fight happens, Luke collapses, and Kalina has a vision of her family screaming and possibly dying. So this is likely the really terrible event that occurred earlier. So Luke was injured, and Kalina tries to use her healing magic, but she technically lost that power because she decided she wanted to wield death magic. So the goddess of healers basically took it away from her. But fortunately, she has just enough left to heal him. And it looks like they're going to have to continue working together for now. So, like I was saying, I really like this story. I really enjoyed the premise. The action hit the ground running. I love mixing magic and modern day together. And the story felt like it had a lot of lore going on it that was the book series was going to explore really in depth. So I think I'm going to stick with this one.
All right. Okay, so thanks Emma for helping out with this. Oh, and Emma also edited today's reviews, so I appreciate
Yeah,
that too. I hate it when I'm reading a review out loud and I'm seeing all these typos,
I know.
and then when I go back to fix them, I've forgotten where they all are and I can't find them again.
Yeah, it
It's the
always trips
worst.
me up when I'm doing the reviews. I'm like, oh, I missed it.
All right. So, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to do this again next Friday. If you don't want to leave our channel just yet, we're serializing Gods and Monsters, a vampire novel by award-winning artist and author E. E. King. And you can see a couple of interviews with her here. And we're up to installment 32 in our novelization, where the novel is in pieces both on our website and she reads it out loud on our channel. All right, subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the episodes, and please leave a comment and tell us what you think. Bye bye, everybody.
Hi.